Adolf Hitler's descent into madness and tyranny was so profound that by the end of World War II, he had orchestrated the systematic murder of 6 million Jews, and his own personal physician, Theodor Moell, was administering him a cocktail of 28 different medications, including barbiturates, amphetamines, and opiates, to manage his erratic behavior. As the Nazi regime crumbled, Hitler's mental state began to deteriorate, and his actions became increasingly erratic, fueled by a toxic mix of paranoia, megalomania, and desperation. The Führer's psyche was a complex web of contradictions, driven by a deep-seated insecurity and a narcissistic need for admiration, which he often sought to satiate through his bombastic speeches and grandiose architectural projects. Hitler's childhood was marked by trauma and neglect, with his father, Alois, being a brutal and abusive figure who beat him regularly, instilling in him a deep-seated fear and resentment. This toxic relationship would later manifest in Hitler's own aggression and intolerance, as he sought to assert his dominance over others through violence and intimidation. His mother, Clara, was overprotective and doting, creating a sense of entitlement and narcissism that would define his later years, as he became increasingly isolated and withdrawn, surrounded by sycophants and yes-men who catered to his every whim. As a young man, Hitler was rejected from art school, a devastating blow to his ego and self-esteem, which he would later seek to compensate for through his grandiose plans for rebuilding Germany and conquering Europe. He drifted through life, working menial jobs and living in poverty, until he finally found his calling in the German army during World War I, where he discovered a sense of purpose and belonging that he had been lacking. However, even this experience was marked by trauma, as he was temporarily blinded by a gas attack and witnessed the horrors of war firsthand, which would later contribute to his growing sense of paranoia and mistrust. Hitler's psychiatric evaluations, conducted by his personal physician and other experts, revealed a complex and disturbing array of symptoms, including paranoia, anxiety, and obsessive-compulsive disorder, which would often manifest in his fixation on minor details and his tendency to micromanage even the most trivial aspects of his regime. He was also known to be prone to tantrums and outbursts of rage, which would often leave his subordinates and advisors shaken and intimidated. His inner circle lived in constant fear of his wrath, as he would often lash out at them for perceived slights or failures, which would further fuel his sense of isolation and paranoia. The Nazi regime's propaganda machine played a crucial role in shaping Hitler's public image, portraying him as a strong and infallible leader, while hiding his true nature and the extent of his mental health issues. However, behind closed doors, Hitler's behavior became increasingly erratic, as he succumbed to his addiction to medication and his own ego, which would often lead him to make reckless and impulsive decisions that would have disastrous consequences for Germany and the world. His relationships with his advisors and generals were marked by tension and mistrust, as he became increasingly isolated and withdrawn, surrounded by a clique of sycophants and yes-men who were more interested in advancing their own careers than in serving the interests of Germany. Hitler's personal relationships were equally disturbing, as he became infatuated with his niece, Jelly Rorbel, who would later die under mysterious circumstances, with many speculating that Hitler himself was involved in her death. His marriage to Eva Braun was marked by possessiveness and control, as he sought to dominate and manipulate her, reflecting his own deep-seated insecurities and fears. Braun would eventually join Hitler in his final days, as they descended into the bunker and the abyss of madness and despair, where they would ultimately meet their end in a tragic and devastating conclusion. As the war drew to a close, Hitler's mental state continued to deteriorate, and his actions became increasingly erratic, as he ordered the destruction of German infrastructure and the execution of his own generals, in a desperate bid to cling to power and avoid defeat. His final days were marked by a sense of desperation and paranoia, as he became convinced that he was being betrayed by his own people and that the war was lost. In the end, it was not the Allies who killed Hitler, but his own hand, as he took his own life in the bunker, surrounded by the ruins of his own making. The psychology of Adolf Hitler is a haunting reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness. His legacy is a dark and terrifying one, a testament to the destructive power of hatred, intolerance, and paranoia. As we reflect on the life and times of this monstrous figure, we are reminded of the importance of empathy, compassion, and understanding, and the need to confront the darkness within ourselves and our own societies, lest we repeat the mistakes of the past and succumb to the same destructive impulses that drove Hitler to madness and tyranny. The echoes of his maniacal laughter still haunt us, a chilling reminder of the horrors that he unleashed upon the world, and the devastating consequences of his twisted and tortured mind.